Hey folks, Kevin with the Silver Edge here, and today I want to talk to you about the deadlift. The deadlift is one of my favorite all-time exercises, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One is it is a full body exercise. When you get into heavy deadlifts, there's not a muscle in your body that's not activated and working in a heavy deadlift. And another reason is because you can get heavy. You can probably get heavier with deadlifts than almost any other exercise that you're going to do. We can really move a lot of weight and really put a load not just on our joints and muscles and body, but our central nervous system as well. A fantastic all-around strengthening exercise. Now, the deadlift does have a little bit of a bad reputation for those of us over 50. You'll often hear people say, oh, you shouldn't do deadlifts, they're bad for your back, or people over a certain age shouldn't do deadlifts because they're bad for your back. And nothing could be further from the truth. A properly executed deadlift will strengthen your back and make you a stronger human being, whereas a poorly or incorrectly executed deadlift will absolutely hurt your back, and you should avoid that at all costs. So hence this little video, we're going to talk about how to correctly set up and execute a deadlift. Now, there's a bunch of different versions of deadlifts. There's a number. We're only going to cover two right here. We're going to cover a conventional deadlift and a sumo deadlift, two of the most common. So let's start with setup, how we set up for a deadlift. I've got a little PVC pipe here, and we are going to start by sending our hips back and down and maintaining a flat back. I like to tell lifters, think of a proud chest. Keeping that chest up is a good cue to keep that flat back. I want my barbell to be right over midfoot, and as I get set into position, what that means is that barbell is just touching my shins. And I've got that set just over midfoot here, and you can see I've got my hips down and back. They're not up high, they're not super low. Now, depending on the length of your femur and just your particular body type, you may sit lower than me, you may sit higher than me. All of that's fine. Really, the mechanics are that nice flat back, that really tight core, and that bar over midfoot. So I will bring all the slack out of the system being my arm. I'm packed in here. I'll pull that bar up. It's touching my shins. And as I rise, I want my hips and shoulders to rise together until I get to my knee. Then I'm going to stand up and lock out. No need to arch your back, anything like that. Just stand up straight. And then I'm going to reverse that. Send my hips back, bar back down into the start position. Now, I don't know if you can see it on the video, but this PVC pipe is actually touching my legs the entire time. It's grazing my shins and coming up. So, two common faults that I see very often in beginning deadlifters is, first, we'll get that set up, and on a heavy deadlift, they'll look perfect, they'll get it to here, and at some point that back gives, and they start to round the back. We want to avoid this at all costs. If you catch yourself doing that, stop, drop the load, reduce the load, and start again. The other very common mistake I see with lifters is they'll get in that perfect starting position, those hips will come up, and then they'll lift. And what's happening here is as I pull and meet that resistance, my hips come up, and now I'm actually in what's known as a Romanian deadlift position, an RDL. Nothing wrong with RDLs, they're great exercises. That's just not what we're doing here. We're doing a conventional deadlift. I want to, again, get set. I'm going to pull so that my shoulders and hips rise together, not so that my hips come up, and then I put all that load back here on my hamstrings and potentially my lower back. And of course, the double whammy is the lifter that comes up and then rounds and then pulls. And that's how a deadlift could potentially get a bad rap. So let's look at a conventional deadlift, a setup with weight and how this is pulled. I'm approaching the bar. You can't see it because these weights are here, but looking down, I'm right over where I tie my shoes, basically. So that bar is probably, I don't know, 3 inches from my shin, but as I get into position, that bar actually just touches, my shin just, I've done this enough that my shin just barely touches that bar. I'm gonna grab just outside of shoulder width. My feet are roughly shoulder width apart as I'm setting up here. Again, I'm bringing my hips down, shoulders up, chest up, Bring all the slack out of the system. All my muscles are tight. I'm going to bring hips and shoulders together, then up. That bar is just barely touching my legs as I make this movement. And that's it. That's a conventional deadlift. So let's turn this around. I'm going to show you guys a sumo deadlift. So both of these are legitimate, great forms of deadlifting. One's not necessarily better than the other, just slightly different. A sumo deadlift does allow you to keep a more upright posture and just a slightly different stimulus. I like a nice wide stance. Looks like the video is cutting out my feet, but my toes are angled slightly outward. And all the cues that we talked about, keeping that neutral spine, that tight core, that chest up, the hips back and down, still apply. But this time, instead of reaching outside of my legs, I'm reaching inside. Now, it's important that I get this bar right in the center. If I grab off center, I'm going to have a funny pull. So I'm looking down, looks like I'm pretty good. I bring my hips down and get set. And again, that same mechanics apply. I'm going to pull all the slack out of the system, brace my core, flat back, my hips and knees, or hips and shoulders rise together, locking out, reversing those motions. And again, that bar is just sliding right down my legs. So that's it, folks. If you're not already incorporating deadlifts into your workout and you have the ability to do this and do this safely, I highly recommend it. Fantastic exercise.